In this lesson for fulfilling orders, we'll discuss promising order rules. Our learning objectives for this lesson are as follows. After completing the topic, you should be able to describe how available to promise or ATP rules and sourcing rules affect order promising, and also be able to explain how to set up ATP and sourcing rules. Our first topic is sourcing rules. Sourcing rules are part of the supply chain network that global order promising uses to promise orders. You can use global order promising to answer questions like these. At a specific organization, you can determine where to get additional supply by using a local sourcing rule. You can also identify which organizations or suppliers can ship product to fulfill demand by using a global sourcing rule. Let's talk about the two types of sourcing rules your enterprise can use. Global sourcing rules define where orders should be fulfilled or shipped from. They aren't tied to a specific organization. Instead, they include only transfer or buy sources, and the buy sources typically represent drop-ship suppliers. Local sourcing rules define how to create additional supply for an internal organization. By definition, you create these rules at a specific organization. They can include transfer, buy, and make sources. Let's consider a scenario where all tablets in the tablets item category can be fulfilled from three sources: internal organization D1, internal organization D2, and an internal supplier called Allied Manufacturing. Now assume there are tighter constraints for a specific product and customer combination. The latest tablet can be shipped only from D1 and D2, and when the customer is big customer, the latest tablet can be shipped only from D1. You can model these kinds of exceptions by using hierarchical sourcing rules, which we'll cover on the next slides. The table on the slide is organized with two column headings: item category or item, and fulfillment sources. In the first row, the item category is tablets, and the fulfillment sources are D1, D2, and Allied Manufacturing with the supplier site 1. In the second row, the item is latest tablet, and the fulfillment sources are D1 and D2. In the third row, the rule is latest tablet to big customer, and the only fulfillment source listed is D1. To model this business scenario, you'll create three global sourcing rules as shown in the table. The table has two columns: sourcing rule and source. In the first row, the sourcing rule is called transfer from D1, D2 Allied. Its sources include transfer from D1, transfer from D2, and buy from Allied Manufacturing, Site 1. In the second row, the sourcing rule is called transfer from D1, D2. Its sources include transfer from D1 and transfer from D2. In the third row, the sourcing rule is called transfer from D1. Its only source is transfer from D1. Next, you'll assign these three sourcing rules at the category, item, and item customer levels as shown in the table. This is what lets you represent the overall rules for the category, and then layer on more specific exceptions for a particular item and customer. The table includes three columns: sourcing rule, assignment level, and assigned to. In the first row, the transfer from D1, D2 Allied sourcing rule is assigned at the item category level to tablets. In the second row, the transfer from D1, D2 sourcing rule is assigned at the item level to new tablet. In the third row, the transfer from D1 sourcing rule is assigned at the item and customer level to new tablet and big customer. You can assign sourcing rules at multiple hierarchical levels as shown on the slide. When global order promising evaluates demand, it looks for the sourcing rule at the most granular assignment level available, and then fulfills the order only from the sourcing defined in that rule. The supported assignment levels are shown here. Note that the levels range from entirely global all the way down to specific combinations like item and customer site or item and shipping organization. Global order promising will consider the most granular assignment level if multiple rule levels exist. Note that you should always make sure to have at least one sourcing rule assigned at the global level to ensure promising doesn't fail. The screenshot on this slide shows how to assign global sourcing rules at different assignment levels within the same assignment set. In this example, the global sourcing rule is called transfer quantity based. This rule defines where to source the tables from and the sequence to use. In the Edit Assignment Set window, you can see that transfer quantity based is assigned at the item and organization assignment level. To navigate there, start from the navigator and select Order Management. Then, click Global Order Promising. On the Global Order Promising page, open the Task Panel tab and select Manage Sourcing Rules. On the Manage Sourcing Rules page, search for the rule you want and then click the Edit icon. With local sourcing rules, you define supply sources for a specific organization. Just like global sourcing rules, you assign local sourcing rules to items and organizations through an assignment set. The table on the slide lists each supply source along with its type and rank. In the first row, the source type is transfer from, the source is M1, and the rank is 1. In the second row, the source type is make at, the source is D1, and the rank is 2. The make at option applies when the item can be manufactured at that organization. In the third row, the source type is buy from, the source is component supply site 1, and the rank is 3. Our next topic is Available to Promise rules. Available to Promise rules, or ATP rules, define how Global Order Promising searches for supply of an item at a specific organization. You can promise orders using different modes. In infinite availability-based promising, you assume unlimited supply for items that aren't constrained. In lead time-based promising, you promise based on lead times for items with a very reliable supply chain. In a supply chain availability search, you promise by evaluating detailed supply availability across the network. As you define your ATP approach, there are 2 key questions to consider. First, should you promise based on actual supply, based on lead times, or by assuming infinite availability? Second, for an assembly, should you also check component and resource availability before you make a promise? Based on the table, each promising mode has its own characteristics. With infinite availability-based promising, supply is assumed to be unlimited. You typically use this mode for low-value, unconstrained items. It supports calendars. You also configure whether order promising should assume infinite supply at the end of the promising horizon. If an item might be discontinued, you can choose to have order promising return an error when it can't find supply to meet demand by the end of that horizon. You set this on the Order Promising Options page. With lead time-based promising, supply is treated as always available after the defined lead time. This works well for items with reliable and predictable lead times. It supports both calendars and lead times. With supply chain availability search, Global Order Promising searches for actual supplies and matches them to demand. This mode is best for fast-moving or critical items where accurate supply tracking matters. It supports calendars, lead times, detailed supply, and optimal fulfillment. We'll further discuss the supply chain availability search mode on the next slide. The supply chain availability search mode provides multiple options for configuring supply searching options as noted on the screenshot. This method helps you prioritize on-hand supply for orders that have earlier requested ship dates, even when those orders are entered after other orders with later. The intent is to avoid allocating on-hand inventory to lower priority orders too early, which could reduce your ability to fulfill a higher priority order that comes in later. You can set these guardrails in a couple of ways. First, you can add a pause task in the orchestration process that delays the reservation step until a defined number of days before the scheduled ship date. It prevents reservations from being created too far in advance, so on-hand inventory is consumed closer to when the order is actually due to ship. Second, if you are using the supply chain availability search promising mode, you can define an ATP time fence in the Available to Promise rules. If an order's requested date falls within that time fence, promising looks at on-hand supply first and then considers future supply. If the requested date is outside the time fence, promising looks at future supply first rather than consuming on-hand supply. Finally, if you use Global Order Promising to future supply, do not also use the reservation service in order management. Instead, use one approach or the other, but not both at the same time. To enable items for order promising, you need to associate each item with an ATP rule. Make sure every item required for promising is assigned to at least one ATP rule at some hierarchical level. For example, you can assign an ATP category and cover all items in that category. In the screenshot, the ATP rule is selected in the Assignment Basis column on the ATP Rule Assignment tab. To navigate there, start from the navigator and select Order Management. Then, click Global Order Promising. On the Global Order Promising page, open the Task Panel tab and select Manage Sourcing Rules. On the Manage Sourcing Rules page, search for the rule and click the Edit icon. Then, click the ATP Rule Assignment tab. This lesson includes a student practice for creating sourcing and ATP rules